Okay, but the point is this. Here's what they're going to have to do. And mark my words, this is what's going to happen. Sometime 4 months to 6 months prior to the point in time when thousands of astronomers are going to say, we see a new star. What's going on? All right? The government is going to have to declare martial law before that time.
Right.
All right? And now they're going to know, because they know, and they have infrared telescopes. They got satellites that they've already sent out years ago that are way out there, already taking some great pictures of it.
It's what most of these missions are for.
Absolutely, and the missions, and I got news. For every mission you know about, there's 10 that you'll never heard about and will never hear about. Okay, trust me on that one. So, and most of the time when they talk about having weapons, talk about we're working on a new this or working on a new that, we already have had it for 15 years and have been using it when they come out and say we're starting to look at it. Okay, and then that's a reality. So get back to Nibiru and Uncle Sam. They're going to do a declaration of a national emergency qualifying for martial law in the United States. They have written in their own paperwork many years ago, whenever this situation was to arise, but I mean this situation, a situation where it was needed to have martial law, that it would have to be presented to the people in a manner such that they feared for their very existence, so that the government will more easily than not, have martial law accepted in our backyard. The American people would have to think that they are going to die, okay, if the martial law is not declared. And it will be one of three manners. It will either be an extreme terrorist event taking place in several cities in the United States simultaneously, or like a 9/11, but in 4 or 5 cities, or it will be an outbreak of a disease, like something like Ebola, or a general uprising among the people, such as a race riots out of control. All right. Now, all of these things is what I had figured would be applied to a national emergency martial law, and not all of them together. I didn't mean that, but one of these three, or even part of that is the possibility of a serious war with Russia or Russia and China. Okay. Now, I had put this into my studies about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it was for the most part before we had all of that Ebola crap surface, and it was before ISIS. There was no ISIS 2 years ago to speak of. These characters cut people's heads off, just because you didn't know how to recite the Quran properly or something. Those guys, all right, that's the big terrorist group that for the most part didn't even exist 2 years ago, year and a half ago, so to speak. The Ebola, it did exist, obviously, but it wasn't, a couple of people died in America with it. They kind of tested the water with that one to see how people would react. And the other one is, of course, that Russia, up 2 years ago, hadn't started to move on into Ukraine. So now we have all of the possibility of a Russian problem, it's a serious problem. We have the problem of the diseases. They're all over the place now. We got measles breaking out. We got Ebola. We got all this gobbledygook happening again. And then, of course, the ISIS concept of terrorism, the possibility. The people of the United States in one day would buy into martial law if some people calling themselves ISIS had major terroristic events in 5 cities or states, the American people would accept martial law tomorrow.
Yeah, Bob, but this is the problem I have with that, is because that may be all true, but if when the shit hits the fan and this thing passes, we're going to realize that our government was lying all this time. Are they going to be able to keep our loyalty?
Right. Now let me explain to you why that doesn't even. Don't even consider that. It doesn't even make any difference. Because here's where they are at, all right? They've been building and getting ready with our money. They've stolen all this money right out of our pockets, all right? When's the last time you think they even spent $1 to fix one bridge in the United States of America? The entire infrastructure, bridge, water ducts, water plants, generators, wire systems, all of that, every one of them in the United States of America are on the borderline of being condemned. That's how lousy they are. We're talking, God knows how many, 500,000 bridges, for crying out loud. They have not spent a penny. That money went into their underground facilities. The foodstuffs was bought with our money. The tunnels were built with our money. All of that has been done secretly to prepare for locations for a limited number of people at the highest level to get out of town and get underground, period. When they close those doors to these facilities underground in the side of the mountains, martial law will already be in effect. The only people up there handling it are also being thrown to the wolves because the people handling a completely rioting civilization on the top of the ground with this stuff taking place. They don't care. There's no more allegiance. They don't care whether you like it or not.
Well, how are they going to roll over?
Excuse me?
How are they going to roll over us after all this happens when the soldiers aren't going to fight for them because they're going to see that they were lied to?
Right. At some point in time, there's going to be that realization.
Right.
Now, by the way, and let me point this out because this is a big part of it. The amount of militarization of the police forces in the United States is totally beyond the dictatorial level already today, as we speak. They have been training in a military direction since at least 1995, when I first saw grenade launchers, gas masks, tanks, troop carriers, 50 caliber machine guns, and full automatics being delivered to the police stations around the entire nation of the world. I mean, every state in the nation here. All right? And that started in the 90s. They have these programs where they actually will give a police station and a sheriff's department grenade launchers and all these things that I'm talking about, 50 calibers, riot-controlled tanks and machine guns, a 50 caliber machine gun, full automatics, and all this kind of stuff into these police forces. They've been doing it since 1994 that I know of. As of today, I have the amount of money, and by the way, that's in the DVD too. I have pictures of the sheriffs taking delivery on this stuff. I have the amount of money that's been spent. Why is the Forestry Service getting millions of dollars of full automatic weapons and riot control gear? Why is the IRS ordering thousands of bullets and thousands of machine guns under the banner of the IRS? Why is the Social Security system have purchase orders for the same kind of stuff? These are actually false billings in some cases, to where they're just saying that it's going to the Social Security. So what's the Social Security doing with machine guns? All right? So they've been doing that intentionally, and that's to build what is a military-controlled police force throughout the United States of America to control the riots, only to protect those people until they get down underground. Once they're underground and they shut those doors on the facilities, wait till you see the films and the pictures that I've got and the DVDs about this thing in terms of the underground facilities. The doors are constructed so that if an atomic bomb went off up on the top level, it won't even affect their doors. Nobody's going to be able to get any place. Then when we travel through, when we have Noah's floods, and we have all the electrical power off, think about that one. I mean, that's something else too. The electricity gone, period. The entire globe, all the power off. All the satellites completely down 20 days before it even gets close. Just the effect on it. The satellites will be gone, done, finished, terminated. No more banking, no nothing. If you got any money any place, and it won't make any difference. What you're going to need is a place to hide and some food and weapons to protect your family.
Right, and any other money you have backed up, you just put it in gold, bury it.
Maybe. Food is going to be more valuable than gold.
Right, but if you have like $1 million, $1 million or something, then you just then you buy what you need in food and seeds and weapons and shelter and all that other good stuff, and the remainder...
You better buy it. You better do some good timing on it.
Yeah.
I would say one thing. If they move on if it even appears that there's things developing that might be used as an excuse for martial law, people better really start paying attention before it happens.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now, here's the back end of it. How bad is it going to be when this thing comes around? Well, the potentials are really frightening. Yeah, and that will happen from two things. One is the gravitational effect. You know, people, again, it's a little thing that we don't think about, unless you're still in school, so to speak. But the moon is what moves. The little moon, this little non-entity out here, so to speak. That's what moves our tides in and out every day. Just the gravity of that, and the sun. They kind of play in tennis with the water, so to speak, pulling it out, dragging it back, pulling it out, dragging it back.
And that's only a third of the size of the planet.
And it's nothing, like in reality. All right, this thing coming by, and by the way, coming pretty fast too.
And made of iron, strong magnetic field.
Potentially made of iron. The gravitational effect would just yank the waters right out of the seabeds. And you got to remember, the Earth's, how fast do you think the Earth revolves on its axis?
Very fast, about 800 miles per hour, and centrifugal force.
It's actually about 1,000 miles an hour.
Right, and the centrifugal force will cause all that water to go on all the coastlines.
Well, yeah. The problem is that. So that's one problem. Then the next problem we talked about, with the Earth potentially passing through the tail of this thing, that would be the tail basically coming behind it. I don't know how long it would be, but that could be really long. But as long as it's going fast, really quick, that's good for us, so to speak, on one hand. But the tail would be the width, approximately, of the planet itself, all right, in terms of the width of the tail. And then it would diminish off from there. So depending on how quick or how soon the Earth would pass that 1 hour to go through that tail, depending on whether it's real close after the passing, going behind the sun, or if it's X numbers of time, hours after it's passed, that will have to do with how thick or how profuse the junk is going to be, because it will diminish the farther away it is from the body of the Nibiru. But you potentially have that storm of asteroids, meteor storms, or whatever you want to call it. The storm we would go through once and then go through the second time. It's going to be terrible. We witnessed a couple of years ago that tsunami that hit Japan and hit
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What about the effects on like the nuclear power plants and stuff like that?
That's another point. And by the way, I also covered that in the DVD. I really got the waterfront covered with this report. But in terms of the tsunami. All right, that tsunami that we witnessed, which was mind-boggling to us in modern times, because we are able to watch it in real time, being transmitted up, and back to our television. Right. And we watched that tsunami where the water just came and just kept coming, and it was like it was like a bulldozer, a liquid bulldozer. 1,000 miles long, and it just came right in and kept going and just wiped out entire giant buildings and communities and everything, and it just kept going like it wasn't even there. Turned everything into floating debris, floated 500,000 vehicles, for crying out loud. I mean, it was mind-boggling. Now, that came from the middle of the ocean, pretty much, that far away, way out in the ocean. And it was a little, tiny earthquake hiccup. That's all it was. It was compared to a big one, okay? A giant one. It was just a kaboom and a collapse of a couple of miles underneath in the seabed, causing a big wave to start. And that's the tsunami. And it goes out 360 degrees from wherever that took place, travels at 500 miles an hour is like an average. 500-mile-an-hour wave, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it gets close to the shoreline. And, of course, it just builds on itself. All right? Now, that was a single hiccup, not a small, but it wasn't a gigantic earthquake. All right? I don't remember what it was, but it may have been a 5 or 7 or something like that. All right, which in downtown Los Angeles would be bad, but not in the middle of the ocean. But that tsunami did what it did. Now, the possibility of multitudes of meteorites or asteroid junk, space junk, the size of a school bus, hitting into all of the oceans, not counting the fact that you might get a couple of them in New York City or Los Angeles, or wherever, any place on the globe, and that even the worst of it relates to where the frontal part. The worst part is probably going to be the front of the planet Earth when it goes through this tail of all this junk. Now, again, thinking in terms of it spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and it will take about 1 hour for it to pass through it, the front will be changing, revolving, such that for that entire hour will be at least 1,000-mile front at any time going through all the space junk, if that made any sense to you. It'd be, revolve. Yeah,
the atmosphere at that point in time will be much more thin.
Yeah, so if you could take a marker and draw a line from the North Pole to the South Pole and held onto the Earth so it didn't move and pushed it through this mess for an hour. Now you do the same thing and draw that line marker and have it spinning 1,000 miles an hour. In the 1 hour it will take from beginning to exiting the junk path, the tail of this thing, you will have had 1,000 miles exposed one time, and then 1,000 miles exposed as the frontal part of this thing the second time. And then, of course, everything behind it, it's hard to analyze what that would be. The mathematics on that is over my head. But, so, what else do we have? So we got junk coming in. We have the gravitational effect on the water. We have what took place according to the people that have done their serious studies on this thing in history, found out that the Earth, during biblical times, the last time it came through, that it came around, was jogged off of its axis 26 degrees when it came around. Now, that can be gravitational, it can be magnetic, it could be, I don't know exactly what that would have been. But they verified that because in that sky disk that I mentioned earlier, where they found this drawing with gold and bronze, this huge disk showing the picture of the sky. It included, now remembering this was from Germany, it included the Orion belt, or excuse me, not Orion, the son of a gun, one of the constellations.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
One of the
the
constellations that normally would not be seen in Germany, in the sky at that time.
That's right.
All right? But it was on the bottom side of this plate, on this drawing, if you will. So on the basis of that, they did the calculations, and that should have been visible in Egypt, but it was visible in the German sky that day when it happened. So it means everything was moved 26 degrees. All right, and that mathematics can be done fairly easy. Now, they went out and they said, okay, if this really happened the way we think, and on this, during those dates in old historic scripture writings, etc., you know, like the monks in Tibet, etc., the Chinese emperors, astronomers, etc., and sure enough, the entire globe was affected in radical weather, storms, winds, and all of that, earthquakes, volcanoes, all those things were affected during that period of time, and they verified it around the entire globe. So again, it was one of the things that said, this isn't a hoax, folks. This is what happened. So, do you have any questions?
Oh yeah, a ton of questions.
But come up with one of them.
Yeah,
I'm going to get a drink of water.
Okay.
I'm drinking my water. Come up with a question.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. I've been writing them down as we've been going along. So I mean, some people claim, and I don't want to take this too far out there because I know a lot of people who this is new to. We've already pushed them the limits as it is.
No question.
Right, but the Anunnaki, supposedly, the link to them, exactly. Okay, that's a part of the first question. I guess. Do these Anunnaki live on that planet? Do they come and visit here as the planet's passing by? Are some of them, or a good majority of them, going to leave as this 10th planet passes by, maybe 20 or 30 years from now? You know, when it's way far out there. And also, are we telepathically linked to this thing? So if humanity evolves spiritually, will we collectively influence the amount of destruction that hits us? So can we limit destruction in that sense? I mean, obviously... Yeah.
Okay, well, let me approach a couple of these thoughts at this time. Okay. For the people that don't know what you're talking about, the Anunnaki is reportedly were the persons that were here before us, and actually potentially the story being that they had created, that they came from another planet. All right, back whatever period of time it would have been, and that they would have been some of the first visitors from outer space, and that literally created many of the, basically created human beings to work under their command, to do mining, you know, on the globe, on the globe of Earth, so that they could take gold back to their planet. And the implication is in the stories, again, this was part of the clay tablets that I referred to that were the Sumerian clay tablets describing the incoming of Nibiru. Now, according to the deciphering of those clay tablets, which, by the way, I equate it sort of like a diary of some people literally living and writing these things down 4,000 years ago in the nation of Sumeria, which is now Iraq, Iran area on the globe today. And part of that story was, however, this is the important part. First off, some people, of course, still don't even believe in aliens and flying saucers and things of that sort. That's a mistake. If you don't believe that exists, I'm afraid that's really a mistake, and it doesn't affect religion at all. The bottom line is some the very staunch Christian would say that God created the earth and the people on the earth, and that was the end of it. But see, that would shortchange my God, because why would he just take out of all of the unbelievable creation of the universe, of the whole thing, why would he just select one lousy little planet that's over here as his only location to put living beings? That doesn't make sense, even religiously, actually, if you apply common sense to your religion also.
Oh, UFOs and aliens no doubt exist. I mean, but what exactly are they? I mean, because...
Oh, yeah, right. And of course...
They could be demonic beings for all we know.
Well, and I would think, using good and evil as, black and white, left and right, being good over here and evil here, and we all pretty much know the difference between it. You can't say that you don't. I think the problem, and it remains to be seen, myself, I absolutely believe in alien life. I absolutely believe aliens exist on the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. I believe that aliens are working hand in hand with people at high levels of governments on the globe. I believe aliens affected Adolf Hitler. And that's a little spooky, because that would indicate, from our point of view, that they were giving a helping hand to the evil side. But we have to realize something, which is really scary stuff. First off, if you accept the fact that aliens are out there and have been zipping in and out of the globe of our Earth for tens of thousands of years, or maybe even 100,000 years, I don't know, which I do believe, absolutely. We have a real problem, and that is that we are no more advanced than a well-grown frog compared to them. And the idea of are they going to come to help us? That's been a question, assuming alien life exists, which I do believe. To not believe that is foolishness. Some of the admissions that we've gotten from...
I believe it likely, Mr. Fletcher, but I mean, the only thing is, if they were some sort of beings, fifth-dimensional beings, for instance, demonic, whatever, fallen angels, they could make themselves appear however they want. So all these meetings with government officials, they could just say they are from some other planet.
Oh, well, whatever. But see, I've done it strictly and totally on the basis of the development of products and things of that in the last 50 years. Okay. There's no way that we went from horse and buggy to landing on the moon in 75 years. Right. Without assistance.
Right.
I'm sorry. And do you have any idea? When we get into this a little bit, if you want to, do you have any idea how many crop circles there are that have taken place in the last few years?
Oh yeah, I've seen a couple myself. I mean, I've seen dozens, probably at least 30 or 40 UFOs in my life.
Okay,
So.
good. Now here's and that's great because you're a step up on an awful lot of people by the fact that you had seen that many.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to make is like 25,000 crop circles over the last 20 years or so. You know, the number gets mind-boggling, and the intricacy, and what they are. Some of them are blueprints. Some of them are astronomical diagrams of space and outer space and planetary constructions. Some of it is medical. Some of it's other types of high-level scientific information. Now, why it's being delivered in that configuration, I'm not sure. But I will say that there are high-level people in the United States that know when they're going to be and when they're going to come, where they're going to show up, take the information down, and then whatever goes from there. Why that's happening, I'm not sure. But those are created by entities off of this Earth.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
Right.
I have very good video. I say very good. It's not very good. It's good enough to be understood. It's not not a Hollywood production video. But I have a couple of good videos of the 18 to 20 inch bronze-colored balls coming down and just going over the field and swinging around in a circle and creating an entire crop circle in 4 seconds.
Yeah.
We have that on film, see? We have that on film. Now, if you go to somebody and say, oh, I don't believe in anything, say, well, please explain this to me and to the Air Force.
Well, I'm 100% with you there. I mean,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of a lot of people ask, why doesn't, or do I think that there will be, let's call them space entities, that would come in and assist or help us or salvage us in the last minute before this takes place.
I hope so.
Apparently, they did not back during the time of the Sumerians, because the way the writings go in these clay tablets, the beings that they called Anunnaki, all right, those guys got back in their spaceships and left when they knew it was headed in. And they took off, and they left those mining, very low-level IQ grunts that were back here digging the holes and pulling out the gold and doing that stuff on their behalf, working like slaves, so to speak, or slave entities. They were stuck. They were just there. And the Anunnaki got in their spacecraft and got out of there before they hit the fan. So, anyhow, it would appear, if they couldn't do it then, if they had the ability to come from with the planet X, it could be that there's life on one of those moons. I don't know. And I have, I don't have any, that's my own supposition, so don't go any place with that. But, that's a possibility. I don't think, if and people say, well, why wouldn't they save us? Why wouldn't they salvage Earth, do what they could to protect it, etc.? It could be that the blowing up or destruction of something like Nibiru would affect 5 other planets that are more important than Earth, someplace.
Right. No, I like the theory where they say that the aliens are leaving us alone because we are our own species and we are responsible for ourselves. And if we destroy ourselves, then that's just the way it's supposed to be. Right?
Okay, but that doesn't bring into account Nibiru. You follow me? On that part of it. The idea that we make our own bed and we got to sleep in it, that certainly is true, and we've not broken any great records in terms of humanity for the last 1,000 years. That's for sure. We are We are the most messed up thing that you could ever imagine. Well, you watch television, you watch the news. What in the world? And the programs that are popular, the junk that's popular on television, embarrasses me. And like I said, I told you I was in the rock and roll business. It takes a lot to embarrass me. You go on the road with the Who like I did. Takes a lot to rattle my cage. But the Earth, speaking just for America, shame on us. The condition we're in right now, shame on us all, as far as that's concerned. And I don't want to get into don't want to become a preacher here, but that's the best way to put it, I'll tell you. So, shame on us.
I have a creepy question for you.
Go ahead, I'm ready.
This one might creep you out of it. So, like you mentioned earlier, how the Anunnaki created humans to mine gold. I agree with that, and
let me say this now, so people don't get the wrong idea. That is the study of Dr. Sitchin, who was a fellow that did the analysis of the clay tablets from Sumeria, and that was his story. Okay, so go from there.
So so what if when they're about to pass, and since Nibiru is supposedly their home planet or home star or whatever, or one of the planets orbiting Nibiru. So what if when they pass, what if like that whole rapture story is true, and what if it's not God taking us up, but what if it's these aliens, and what are they going to do? Are they going to eat us? Are they just going to start eating a lot of the population, like cattle?
Well, see, the big problem is we don't know, and it's my belief. Again, it's just from studying just a multitude of things that many years ago I could have cared less. But unfortunately, I've been put in a position where I've had to study things that I may not have had an interest in. But we don't know. Let's take the average these grays that are been reported as a primary worker that's here all the time. Flying in on the different things and doing the experiments on people that have been picked up.
They scared the hell out of me. Yeah.
Okay, it would, boy, if you weren't scared. If you were picked up by one and a group of them and put up and had experiments done on you.
They are the red UFOs, and if I see a red UFO, I do a prayer real fast and just I command it to leave, basically. And they are very much telepathically linked, so they will usually listen.
So we get to talking about the Greys. I think the Greys are a working class, a programmed entity to carry out tasks. I think they are predominantly the characters that are manning the UFOs, the saucers, and things of that sort. Some of them are unmanned, just non-remote controlled objects. Some of them are controlled, like I say, a saucer, like the ones that crashed in Roswell, and it was 2 or 3 of them that crashed there. According to FBI papers that I have from from Hoover, FBI Director Hoover at that time. Anyhow, I think they are just a working class, sort of a robot, if you will, and they carry out what they're supposed to, and that there is other thinking entities above them that would control them, and et cetera, et cetera. According to my wife is just telling me what time it is. According to I totally lost my direction here. I believe those little entities. They are what they are, and I think a remote control situation. According to many people that have come forward with a thing called the Discovery Project? I think that's what it is.
The taller ones are clones.
The Disclosure Project. That's what it is. Disclosure Project. These guys, a couple of them I know personally. Their summation is that there's as many as 300 individual different space entities that have been coming in and out for so long around Earth, and there's that many of them.
300 different types of alien species. Yep.
Yes, I think that was the number that they had come up with. And the craft, when you really get into it, and as a couple of our astronauts, a couple of the guys, what's his name, went on the moon, Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell went on to the moon a couple of times, twice I think. I had the recording of it. As soon as they landed, he said, "Oh, they're here. They're ahead of us." And their craft is parked up on the edge of the crater over there, and it's gigantic, and I can't believe it, but they're here, and just like we talked about, they're already up here waiting for us, and you go to the fellow that was in charge of Skunk Works operations that created all our spacecraft designs and all of that. Just before he died, he said, "We have been flying, we have had the capability to go to the outer planets and fly around the planets for years and years." And he says, it's never going to be made public, but we've been doing it for years and years. And when these guys at that level, he had no reason to lie. He was dying, I mean, literally on a deathbed kind of a thing. He said, we've been doing that, and they're talking about warping space and time. It's the only way you can go between the planets, etc. That is
portal wormhole
has been an old theory for long. And the truth is, and by the way, you can get into that a little bit in the DVDs. The bending space and time is the only way. You can literally end up going forward in time, back in time. Time and space is a graphic entity that can be varied and altered. And once you can figure out how to bend it, you can instantaneously go from a craft 50 miles over top of New York City to 50 miles over top of the moon.
Anywhere.
And do it within a blink of an eye. These entities that do exist out there, they have that ability. But they also have the ability to help us or not. And I don't think the way the people at the highest levels of our corrupted government have been scurrying around building their rat holes to hide in, I don't think they've had any indication that any space entity is going to come down and help us out when Nibiru comes back again.
I think they will.
That's good. Well,
I think they're going to be crushed underneath their underground cities.
Excuse me?
I
don't know. And I don't know. It's
global earthquake here. When this thing passes and the tectonic plates realign and they move back up, this is going to be a worldwide earthquake.
Right.
Every place will be at least a 9.0 on the Richter scale. Some places 15.0.
Yeah, I believe it will be. We're looking. If it does not get pulled away, in a manner such that it doesn't do this major damage, we're going to have tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes, meteor storms, and all of the above in a very short period of time on the globe. I don't know how well off these people are going to be underground with their facilities. I'm going to get out of here. But you mentioned it earlier. and you want to have another little thing to just add to the soup here, so to speak, we have 130 nuclear power plants in the United States.
Yeah.
And when they go through their melt thing, it only takes one, but
that's when we're going to need their help.
If half of them go through this meltdown situation because there's no way to control them, so you're talking 100 years before the general area, any one of those is even livable again.
Yeah, and if all of them go off, you can forget about it. So we're definitely going to need their help. So
the whole thing, I'll tell you one thing, there will be a lot of people praying that never believed in God.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, that's another thing. Like Revelations, it mentions, Jesus will come in the sky as a thief in the night and all that stuff. But I believe a lot of that stuff is just symbolism for Nibiru. And when people see Nibiru and they see all the destruction, they're going to realize that a lot of what they learned in the Bible was symbolism and that the government was lying to. I don't think anybody's going to trust the government, especially the people who work under them in the military. The military people that they have trying to protect them as bodyguards. They're going to turn on them, I think.
They're not going to know when the martial law is declared. Basically, they'll just go in. That's total militarily controlled every street corner, so to speak. Right. But they're not going to know. They're going to be convinced it's because of terrorism or Ebola disease or this thing or that thing. They're not going to be told what it is. By the time that's again, I'm going to say 4 to 6 months ahead of the first sightings. See, then when the sightings take place, the bad guys, they're already going to be down their hideouts, and they don't care what goes on. They're just going to lock the doors and start eating their dry foods.
True.
And they're going to be praying that some of them come through it, and I have no idea how long they think they may have to be underground, but they will have to be for a pretty long time.
A long time,
because according to archaeologists digging up the old dirt that gives that story, the scientific story of what took place, by digging into the dirt and doing the layer thing. The last time Nibiru passed close, it was 100 years of no vegetation in the dirt.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, sports fans. Hey, too bad we didn't have anything to talk about.
Good afternoon. This is Universal News Media. Today is March 3rd, 2018. Today we will see something that looks like a flying shoe. We will also see several large planets, moons, and eclipses. All of the images you are about to see were obtained within the last 4 days from the Federal Aviation weather cams scattered across Alaska and Canada. All videos are in time-lapse mode, with each frame equal to 10 minutes. Our first video came from the southeast-facing weather cam located in Say Key, British Columbia, in Canada. One of the eclipse concealment jets projects a large pink triangle onto a shoe-shaped object in the sky. It is being blurred by technology. The flashlight sun, explained in a minute, engulfs this object in glare, while the eclipse concealment jet swings around to line itself up with the object and the center of the flashlight sun. The flashlight sun is a very intense light source installed between the Earth and the Sun, much closer to the Earth. Eclipsing planets pass in front of the real Sun, but behind the flashlight sun, so that it's not obvious an eclipse is occurring. The eclipse concealment jet also projects a large triangle over the object being hidden as a further measure to obscure it. Here is a contrast-enhanced view of the object. The flashlight sun moves away, and another contrast view provides better detail. The blurring mechanism is used to hide 2 planets viewed from the southeast-facing weather cam located in Yukon, Alaska. There is one more planet above the one that the arrow is pointing to. They will both emerge once the flashlight sun has passed in front of them. The black dot in the center of the flashlight sun emits a black positioning indicator beam to the eclipse concealment equipment waiting for a signal. The eclipse concealment jet swings into view in the bottom right corner of the camera's screen, keeping in perfect alignment with the black dot and one of the planets for optimum concealment. Notice how terribly dark it is for midday. It is almost noon. Once past, the planets are then blurred. They then fade into transparency from the atmospheric chemicals. Our next planet is seen rolling across the sky from the east-facing weather cam located in Trading Bay, Alaska. The St. Michael weather cam caught this gigantic view of the sun. This is not the sun. It is the flashlight sun in an eclipse. Another function of the flashlight sun is to completely engulf a nearby celestial object in glare, rendering it non-viewable. The southeast-facing weather cam in Soldotna, Alaska, caught this small moon just emerging from the flashlight sun's enormous glare. A striped planet also comes into view. Thus, the flashlight sun emits a black positioning indicator beam to the eclipse concealment jets waiting for a signal. In response, a reflection of the concealment jet is viewed in the lower right corner of the screen, keeping in perfect alignment with the eclipsing planet and the black dot for optimum concealment. Both planets fade into transparency from the atmospheric chemicals. The southwest-facing weather cam in Palmer, Alaska, caught a sunset already taking place beneath the real sun, which is still up in the sky. The flashlight sun takes on a very contorted shape as it attempts to completely engulf this celestial object in glare in order to obscure it from view. Reflections of the concealment jet are visible. These objects are part of an approaching celestial system. Many people ask when this system will make its closest pass to our Earth. A general indication of time is provided in the following pages of text. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe.
It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Crazy.
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
You to vote on the news, and here's the winner. There's a huge, hidden, heavenly body right here in our solar system. Evidence is mounting that either a brown dwarf star or a gas giant planet is lurking at the outermost reaches of our solar system, far beyond the planet Pluto. According to the British newspaper, The Independent, the object is 4 times the size of Jupiter. Experts say the presence of such a massive object could explain why a barrage of comets has been coming from that direction. We'll post.
Hi, my name is David Morrison. I'm a NASA space scientist, and I want to talk to you very briefly about Nibiru. I'm doing this because I received a note from a 12-year-old girl recently that said, She wondered if the video I made 2 years ago was still valid, that she and her classmates were scared about Nibiru, and could I please explain, from a science point of view, why we know Nibiru is not real and is not a danger. You know, the simplest thing to say is just that there is no credible evidence whatever for the existence of Nibiru. There are no pictures, there's no tracking, there's no astronomical observations.
Are we being primed, Gordon, for some major announcement?
Well, that's the thing is, now the Zetas say that the Council of Worlds has told the president, you've got to announce it. I say, you know, everyone I tell that to goes, well, I'll eat my hat if the president ever announced that. But if he did, you know, you can speculate that the first thing he would say is Ronald Reagan had an executive order that this is top secret, and every other president signed on, but now I'm going to be the one who's breaking that because everybody has to know.
And what would he, well, we're coming up to the break. When we come back, speculate on what you think he would say, okay? With our special guest, Gordon James Giannotto. And we're talking about Planet X. Now, he has sent us some interesting pictures that you should get up to coasttocoastam.com and just take a look at them and make up your own mind. And I'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. If you need to email me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com. Well, next hour, we'll take your phone calls with Gordon James Giannotto as we talk about Planet X. And welcome back to Coast with Gordon James Giannotto. Gordon, let's speculate a little bit on if there's an announcement of this planet. How will it be announced?
Well, there's two lines of thought. One is from the Zetas that the Council of Worlds has told the president that he has to announce it. The other is my line of thought, which is that how can he not announce it? Because as Planet X comes closer and closer to the Earth, eventually it's going to come very close. It's going to be as large as the full moon, and it's going to grab the Great Atlantic Rift and pull it up. And people don't realize that the continents are granite, and they float on the magma core. So they're just floating there. So the Great Atlantic Rift is a line of mountains right down the center of the Atlantic Ocean from Iceland to Antarctic, and there's an upwelling of magma right there. And as the North Pole of Planet X is in line with the Sun, as Planet X is in line with the Sun, and the North Pole is pointed at the Earth, it's every day when the Atlantic Ocean faces the Sun, the Atlantic Rift gets pulled down towards Planet X, and then as the Earth continues to turn, it gets released, because when the North Pole of Earth starts going towards the North Pole of Planet X, then it gets pushed back. But so eventually what's going to happen is Planet X is going to grab the crust. It's going to be close enough that the crust will stop turning with the core. So nothing changes the core, and nothing changes the North Pole of Earth pointing up. But what's going to happen is Planet X is trying to go by, and the day it goes by, it's going to grab the crust and slide it up over the North Pole and then let go of it. And when it lets go of it, the new North Pole is going to be the eastern tip of Brazil, Recife, Brazil. And there's going to be 600-foot tidal waves followed by the tail of Planet X brushing the Earth with all these rocks, which was one of them was the meteor over Russia.
So you're talking catastrophe here.
Absolute catastrophe. But the thing is that after that, with no governments and no religions and no economy, the unselfish ETs are going to come and give unspecified help to unselfish survival communities. So, because people say, well, all the nuclear reactors are all on faults all over the world, but they could transmute the half-life of plutonium from 125,000 years to 1.25 seconds. So, but they haven't said what they're going to do, because we're supposed to be taking some responsibility for ourselves. So,
what's the timetable on this?
Well, see, that's the thing. There isn't a timetable, and that's the number one question everyone asks. Well, when is this going to happen? But the thing is it could happen at any time. The only country that's taken any provision is China, which has built these ghost cities, because remember I had said that the southeastern China plate was going to be sinking. Well, Jakarta, Indonesia, parts of it are 85 feet below sea level. That sinking is almost 70% complete in that tip of the Southeast Asian plate. But all the other earth changes have stopped. And I was talking to Nancy on the phone. I said, that I heard that these metal boxes were found on the beaches in Oregon, and they were vibrating. And I said, I think there's extraterrestrial devices. And Nancy started saying, no, I've told you before, there's no extraterrestrial devices on Earth. And all of a sudden, the Zetas broke through Nancy, and speaking through her to me, they said, this is absolutely true. And she later wrote about this, and this was, you remember, people have said, well, there weren't any boxes, or it was a hoax, or whatever, but it is true. On all the faults of the Earth, there are tens of thousands of these boxes vibrating, and what they're doing is, instead of letting the movement of the plates, because the roiling of the magma deep in the core of the Earth is causing these quakes and these other shifts. The north end of South America is going to move to the west. The north end of Africa is going to move to the east. The Atlantic is going to get wider. The Pacific is going to get narrower. So there's all these things. And the Zetas had said there was an event calendar, and 7 was preliminary Earth changes, 8 was massive social change, and 9 was worldwide volcanoes, earthquakes, and sinkings. And so anyway, these metal boxes have put that off, and the reason why is because they want to have the massive social change. And you can imagine if the president does announce it, of course there's going to be massive social change.
Well, if it's going to happen, will he announce it? To me, it sounds like he's compelled to.
Well, that's my thinking, is because when it finally separates from the sun far enough that you can see it with your naked eye. Now, I've said I've gone out, my wife has gone out, I've got hundreds of pictures of 2 suns in the sky that I took myself. Now, if I can do that, then anyone can do that. And, so there it is. There's this bright glowing area. You're not looking at Planet X itself because it's in between the Earth and the sun. So it's like trying to photograph the new moon. You just can't do it. But it's got a 5 million mile long or 10 million mile long. It's really, it's a long tail, twin-stranded, stretching towards the Earth because of static electricity. So Planet X is not going anywhere. It's sitting there. And the clump of 4 planets, the dark twin, Venus, the Earth, and Planet X, are still rotating around the sun, but they're not moving in relation to each other. And the tail is stretched towards the Earth, so that rock that came down over Russia and the other ones that were seen over San Francisco and Cuba and Japan are all from the tail of planet rocks, and there's trillions of them. So this is going to be a big disaster. So when the president announces it, and I mean, I'm not sitting in his office privy to whatever they're deciding, but I can tell you this. They really don't want people he's not going to use the word Planet X because that's the term that the Zetas have used and that is on Zeta Talk is Planet X.
That's panic time, right?
So they don't want people to run to Google, do a search, and go, oh, look, there's a woman in Wisconsin who's been in telepathic contact with extraterrestrials, because that reveals 2 things. We're about to have giant disasters, and second of all, there are extraterrestrials who have been telling the truth since 1995. So they don't want to do that. So it's interesting that they started talking about it as Nibiru. So I was talking to Nancy, and she's starting to, every time she says Planet X, she goes AKA Nibiru or dash Nibiru or slash Nibiru, so that if anybody does a Google search on Nibiru, they're still going to come up with Zeta Talk. So he's going to say, look, Reagan signed an executive order making it top secret. Every president signed on, but I'm such a humanitarian that I'm telling you that there has been a planet between the Earth and the Sun for 9 years, and why not? I mean, if it separates from the Sun where every single person on Earth looks up and goes, oh my God, what's that? And the glowing area, the thing that's at the 5 o'clock position, is the tail, which is sort of transparent, translucent, whatever you want to say, because it's a cloud of dust or red iron oxide dust. It's lit by the sun, and you can see that from Earth. So that's what people are taking pictures of, is the tail of Planet X stretching towards the Earth. And you can't see Planet X itself, but one of these days, when it gets far enough from the sun, you are going to see it. And then at that day, George, don't you think everyone's going to go, the government couldn't tell us there's a planet?
Sure, absolutely. No,
and they're never going to believe another word the government ever says again for any reason.
Not at all. So, all right, 6.8 billion people, Gordon, on the planet. How many people may perish?
Probably 60% are going to die exactly at the moment of pole shift, and another 30% are going to die from disease and starvation and shock. I mean, what the president should be announcing and saying, listen, we've got to move away from the coastlines. I mean, imagine what a 600...
And what's the timetable again?
Well, that's the thing is, like, there isn't a timetable. There's an event timetable, but the president has been trying to announce it since last September. So first they tried with the emergency broadcast system.
That was all screwed up.
That didn't work. And then, believe it or not, I mean, you know, you think if you're president, you can just announce whatever the hell you want. And no, you can't, because there are people, the elite and the rich and the powerful, don't want you to stop going to your job. I mean, if they announced the whole truth, do you think anyone would show up for their job? Pilots, policemen, firemen, truck drivers?
No, people would want to be with their friends and family.
Right, and they'd all head for Wyoming and Montana and places like that, you know, as far away from the coast as they can.
The safe havens.
Right, and so you can figure out where... Now, I live on a mountaintop in the middle of the Maine coast because Maine was held down by glaciers, and it's slowly rising, so once the crust comes free of the core, it's just going to pop up another 500 feet. So I'll be doing fine with a 600-foot tidal wave. But Florida, that's actually going to sink. The UK, that's going to sink. Japan is going to sink. So a lot of places, it isn't just a matter of a 600-foot tidal wave. And then, of course, all the ice in the whole world is in the wrong place, so that's going to melt. So the Zetas say the final sea level is going to be 700 feet above present. So the president isn't going to say what's going to happen. He's going to say there's a planet in between the Earth and the Sun, and now this is what I think, and, you know, speculation, because, you know, I'm not privy to the script here, but you know, that he would turn it over to NASA, which would say, yes, there's a rogue planet, but we were prohibited by national security, but don't worry about it. Go back to sleep. If anything's going to happen, we'll tell you. And then maybe they turn it over to NOAA, which is saying, well, this huge Earth wobble is what's causing all this weather. They're never going to admit that global warming and climate change were a lie, because can you imagine the lawsuits? It would bring the whole world to a halt, because how many hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on reducing fossil fuels? And, you know, the thing is Planet X is roiling the magma, so the magma's circulating closer to the bottom of the crust, so the seafloors are warming, and the ice is melting from underneath. But the actual truth is the Arctic just had one of the coldest winters in years, and the amount of ice that formed this winter in the Arctic is unbelievable. Antarctica's been gaining ice. The top of the Himalayas and a lot of these glaciers are gaining ice. So this whole global warming thing, they're never going to use that phrase again. They would rather die than say global warming. So, you know, I don't know how he's going to put it, but my opinion is he's got to announce it. And meanwhile, the government is doing all these strange things, like ordering 1.2 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition. They're going to arm these Social Security employees, and the National Weather Service employees are all going to be packing with hollow point bullets. I mean, come on, who thinks you know, that's normal? What are they expecting? And you know, of course, there's going to be some people who are going to riot and steal and loot and God knows what.
Well, things could be out of control.
Right, they could be out of control. But yet, if they do announce it, then people will go, well, this is something that we're all facing together. Let's work together to save as many people as possible. But they've got to do it sooner than later. Now, I live on a mountaintop. I heat with wood. I've got an outhouse. I'm ready for no electricity and no fuel. You know, I live in a forest. I've got wood all around me. So, you know, my theory is if you're ready for pole shift today, then you're going to be ready for it whenever else you can. But if you notice, around the world, the economy has not been getting better, regardless of what they're saying. And people are realizing every day that everything they've worked for all their lives is coming to naught. And hopefully people will say, well, really, what is important? And they'll realize, every time you see a disaster, you see people say, well, I lost everything, but, at least we all survived. And, that's what's important. And people are going to start realizing, well, maybe people are more important than possessions. But this Earth wobble, I went out last July to take a picture of the full moon rising over the mountain in Maine where I live. And when I was in elementary school, we had a target range in the basement. So when I was in the third grade, we had lockers all the way down the hallway, and every guy in the third grade had his own .22 caliber rifle in an unlocked locker in the hallway, and we all had bullets in our pocket, and we couldn't wait till 3 o'clock to go downstairs.
That wouldn't happen anymore.
No, and I grew up in the town next to Sandy Hook, so but there are people who've decided to be selfish and doing awful things, but the majority of everybody is very conscientious. Maine is second in the nation for guns per person and 49th in gun-related deaths per person. So, just because, so people are legitimately saying, well, wow, I got a feeling something's not right. And you see that show, Doomsday Preppers.
Oh, sure, yeah.
People are like, well, the economy isn't coming back. I was in Walmart the other day. They had 15 people in a 5-acre store. And I said to the cashier, you can't even be paying your overhead with this. And she goes, oh, no, the economy's going to be coming back. Well, okay, fine.
They've been hit hard.
That's what you say. But so I was out there taking pictures of the full moon, and I guess probably I learned to have a steady stance with my hands and a camera at an early age. I used to win NRA sharpshooter awards. And that was, starting in the third grade. So anyway, I shot 2 pictures, and the mosquitoes were biting me like crazy. So I wanted to get a good picture of the full moon, and so I shot a whole series of pictures, and then I ran inside to get out away from the mosquitoes. And when I was playing them back on my computer, I realized that in 2 consecutive pictures, I hadn't moved my hands at all. There's a table up on top of the mountain, and there's the full moon. And in the second picture, the moon is moved to the right, not up. Now, if you think about it, everything, the moon, the stars, the sun, all rise in the east, go up to the midheaven, and then set in the west. And here I got 2 pictures of the moon, and between the 2 pictures, the moon moves sideways.
How'd that happen?
Well, that was like, I think the ETs, like I said, I've been in contact with ETs my whole life, and I think they guided me to do that because that is one of the most remarkable pictures. Now, I've gone out and watched Sirius rising and Orion rising in the east, and then I go back 20 minutes later, and all of a sudden it's like 45 degrees further south, but it isn't any higher in the sky. Now, why would that be? That's because every single day, Planet X pulls the magnetic bar of the Great Atlantic Rift down towards it, and then as the Earth continues to shift and the Atlantic no longer faces the sun, then the North Pole, which doesn't like the North Pole of Planet X, pushes the North Pole of the Earth back. So you get these wobbles, and what you get is this gigantic loops in the jet stream. So normally the jet stream moves from west to east, but now if you notice these weather maps, and why wouldn't you with all these big storms? So everybody's more interested in the weather than ever because it's really can be life or death. And what you get is these giant arcs of cold air coming down from the Arctic, and 30 miles to the east, you've got this giant arc of tropical air coming up from the Caribbean, and you've got this clash of fronts that makes these gigantic storms. Look at Hurricane Sandy. And, if the government told the truth, they should say nobody should rebuild anywhere. But it's just like Katrina in New Orleans. People are saying, well, we're going to bring it back, and it's going to be so meaningful, and we're going to have Seaside Heights, New Jersey, ready for the tourist season. And, but the truth is nobody should be there now at all because this is right in the danger zone. They should be saying, well, we're going to move anyone that wants to go from the coast. And that's the interesting thing. The Zetas have said even when this is announced, probably only as much as 60%, but no more than that, are going to go, oh, my God, we've got to go to safety. And the rest are going to go, well, I really don't want to change anything, so I'm going to keep going to work. And if a tidal wave washes over me, then that's it. I'll just die. Well, okay, that's what this life is like. You're entitled to be a skeptic. You're entitled to be in denial, and you're entitled to die in it, but there's no reason for you to do that.
Hold on for a second, Gordon. We're coming back for phone calls with you next on Coast to Coast AM. Indeed, and we're going to take your phone calls when we come right back on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. Gordon, are you saying then in our solar system we've got a dark twin to Earth, we've got a burned-out binary star, and we have Planet X?
No, the binary star is quite a distance away. That's why it takes 3,657 years for Planet X to return. So it's something we've never seen because it's burned out, but it is a huge body, and that's where it started. And evidently, Planet X has been coming here at least 2 billion years. So, it wasn't that the Anunnaki were always there. They reached a point where they decided they wanted to powder the gold and put it in their atmosphere to keep the planet a little bit warmer. It's got giant hot magma in its core, and it's got water, which has the highest specific heat of any substance in the universe, so it holds heat. It takes longer to heat water than anything in the universe, and water holds heat longer than any. So, but they were getting cold, so that's where the whole quest for gold came from, is from that. And Richard Hoagland has said that, and he's a guest on your show quite often.
Quite a bit.
He said that Phobos is a spaceship because it's a hollowed out and it's got chambers in it because they use ground-penetrating radar. But actually, Phobos is one giant gold nugget, and the Anunnaki, since they came back, have been mining it with robots.
That's got to be worth something.
Oh my God! So but if anybody thinks I'm making this stuff up, I mean, go do a search in Wyoming. Dick Cheney tried to get the Wyoming legislature, and he only failed by a few votes, to buy a used aircraft carrier. Now, what in the hell would Wyoming use?
There's no water there, is there?
Well, that's the thing is, Edgar Cayce said that Omaha was going to be the greatest seaport in North America after pole shift, and evidently he's planning that the Mississippi will split wide, or saltwater will go up to the Great Lakes, and then up the Missouri and the Platte rivers, and then maybe the Red River. And I guess they were planning to, keep it, in the Great Lakes or in the Gulf, and then float it right up to Wyoming. But you can see why he would want that. It's got nuclear power. It's got a hospital. It holds 5,000 people, and he could load it with fighter strike jets, and be king of the world. And you look at the billionaires around the Earth, they're trying to start their own space programs. But the Council of Worlds has said, no, nobody's going to leave Earth and come back as kings of the Earth afterwards. No, they're all going to have to go through it. And whether you're a billionaire or not, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves. So, you've heard of the idea of these deep underground bunkers everybody was going to head to.
Yeah.
But, how well are they going to survive in 10-plus power earthquakes? So they're not. But then, after pole shift, at the hour of pole shift, when the tidal waves start, then everyone's going to, after that, there won't be any earthquakes, so people are going to want to be underground, because how are you going to survive this fall of rocks?
Okay, let's go to the phones.
You to vote on the news, and here's the winner. There's a huge, hidden, heavenly body right here in our solar system. Evidence is mounting that either a brown dwarf star or a gas giant planet is lurking at the outermost reaches of our solar system, far beyond the planet Pluto. According to the British newspaper, The Independent, the object is 4 times the size of Jupiter. Experts say the presence of such a massive object could explain why a barrage of comets has been coming from that direction. We'll post